Dansa, Kimberly Tipscout Sigasun, Nakoachi Egwa Basimu Chakatna Ochinia. So my name is Kim Knight, and I am from both Sweetgrass and Stony Knoll First Nation, and I'm here with my sister.
Danse, Pamela Peterson Nitsigasun, Nakochi Ekwa Basimu Chakatna Uchinia. I'm very grateful to be invited to this space and to share what we've been asked to share, and very honored to also be here with my sister and to have this conversation.
We were asked to share about medicine wheel teachings or the life cycle teachings. And we choose to do that with an open mind, an open heart, and to come with honesty and integrity while teaching you today.
We always want to ensure that a safe space is created when having these conversations.
Why is it important to learn about the traditional life cycle?
I think it's so important because that's part of our foundation as Nehio people, First Nations people, Métis people, Inuit people, because that's right there, our DNA, our cell memory. If you don't know where you are, you're lost. You're always trying to figure out where you fit, why is my past so important? And I think that's a huge piece that's missing from our youth, our young ones, even our adults, our young adults, our older people. And to me, that was something that was done to us with residential school.
So is it safe to say that it brings awareness of what Indigenous people go through in regards to colonization?
Yes, well, yes, it does.
Awesome, thank you.
So I think the conversation needs to be had with everybody about why the importance of traditional life cycle and what it means to us. And it looks very different from the Western perspective and the Western worldview. To me, this grounds us not only spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally. It grounds us as people, and it's important to share that knowledge and to have those teachings, so we can turn around and teach our young ones what it means to be Nehio in that life cycle of what the important things that need to happen in each of those stages. So that's my perspective on that.
When I first started to learn about the traditional life cycle, I was so lost. I didn't know what I wanted out of life. I didn't know what my purpose was. I knew that there was something missing. And from late Gukum Teresa is where I got the teachings about our own creation stories. It's good to learn about Big Brother and the creation stories that are of the land, that exist about the land. But when we really want to focus on our purpose here on earth and our journey, it's important to understand where we come from. And so the story goes, and it's a sacred story, but it was given to me to share. And I find that it gives purpose to even start that thinking about your own purpose in life. So did you want to hear the story?
Please, okay. Kim, please share the story.
I'll tell you the story. So we actually start off as a creator's flame, some people call it. That little soul flame that other people call it. But it's that home fire. And we all start off in creator's home fire. And we have to sit with creator and know what our spirit is missing and know what we need to strengthen and know what we need to learn about these lessons. And so we sit with creator and we pick our parents. We pick the events that we'll learn from. And this isn't only an Indigenous story. I'm actually reading a book as well, where she's a spiritual healer, and that's what she endorses, that Indigenous creation story. And so we sit with creator and we go through everything. Creator answers or asks us all of these questions, and we choose everything. And so when we're finally ready and we're set in our way and we're ready to journey to the earth, creator takes us by the hand, and takes us halfway to where we need to go, halfway to earth. And then he leaves us there for a little bit. We sit there and we wait for that perfect moment for our parents to meet and to bring us to the earth in a physical form. So we sit with the stars and we watch we watch the earth and we wait for that time to be just perfect for us to make our way. I remember a long time ago, my late kuka, my late dad's mom, late mom, she had talked about, shooting stars, and she would say that life is coming to the earth. And that's what she talked about. She talked about when we see a shooting star, it's a time to celebrate because there's a life being formed in the physical earth. And I never understood that until, until I learned from Kukum Teresa about the creation story. So when we're ready, we do fall to the earth. And it's actually scientifically proven that our bodies are made up of stardust. All the vitamins, minerals, water that fall, in the meteors, that's what our bodies are made up of. So we are actually star people. And it's just recently discovered in science, science that backs up that creation story. But so we we are conceived, and science also pinpoints the moment of conception. So there's a video that I usually show. You could probably Google it. Google moment of conception, and it'll show you studies that have been done with, eggs. I think it's from goats or, an animal, but it shows you that moment of conception, and there's a flash of light. And so this flash of light is that home fire. So that's that proof that, we're born with this light inside of us. And so we spend 9 months in our mommy's tummy, and it's a spiritual. We're already born into a very spiritual act, and that's where a lot of our Mossbag teachings come from. Our cradleboard teachings, our baby swing teachings come from. But yeah, so we spend 9 months, inside of our mother's womb, and that's why it's a delicate time in your pregnancy. We're warm, it's dark, it's everything's soft, and then when we're born into bright lights and lots of noise, and it's cold, and so we're born into institutions. We're born in hospitals nowadays, whereas long time ago it was we were born on the land. We were born in nature. So yeah.
I know Late Kukum used to also share during that pregnancy time when the mom was carrying the baby, the teachings were like the surroundings had to be quiet. She had to be unbothered by the outside world, that everything that she did directly affected the unborn child that she was carrying. So that's why the environment had to be, quiet. The voices had to be quiet. The old ladies really protected that mother who was carrying that unborn child, because they knew that those outside environments would ultimately affect her unborn child. Something as simple as a teaching like not eating oranges when you're pregnant, because that mimicked like the placenta, and you would have a hard labor because so there's deep teachings during that sacred time. So there's
Well, even the men played a role, right? The men played a role too in child rearing, and so usually the men were the warriors. They were loud. They were I don't want to say aggressive, but they were warriors, and their demeanor changed when they entered their own home fire, so their own teepee. Their voices softened. Their actions softened. They were more loving. They nurtured their wives. Because they knew about the blessing of the babies. So that's the healthy preparation of childbirth. There was also rituals and celebrations.
such as belly button. Like, what did you do with the belly button? What did you do with the placenta? There's many teachings that go with that. I guess you would call it in the medicine when it comes to the medicine wheel. That first quadrant is the early childhood, the childhood quadrant, and it's from birth to about 12 years old.
Mm-hmm. Now it's 12
Yeah,
years
now
old.
it's 12
different
years
now.
old. So there was many rituals, like I said, like the belly button teachings, Mossbag teachings also came with that. Even as simple as wearing a bonnet for your baby, there's teachings with that. Many different things happened during that very important time of 0 to 5. Especially 0 to 5 is so important. Child is very impressionable.
They're also very pure. So another teaching would be cutting holes on the bottoms of the moccasins as well. I remember doing that for my kids when they were babies, because they're so pure and they're in that spiritual quadrant of their life, or that spiritual realm of their life, that they could sense other spirits around. They could sense other beings around. So it was important to make sure that your baby remained grounded, because your baby isn't grounded until they walk, and that's another ceremony, is a walking out ceremony, right? The first time your baby feet touch the earth, that's when you don't need to cut the holes in the bottom anymore. But yeah, there's cool things like that.
All children's needs were met by the people that surrounded them, which were in pre-colonial times, were the elders. The elders were the ones that were doing the most child rearing, I guess, because the moms and the dads had their roles within their societies, and it was mainly the children that were left with, or was the children that were left with the elders. So the elders were, I guess, sure to make sure that the teachings were passed down. And this was done through mentoring, showing the child certain, I guess, types, how to survive in the camp.
So children were also viewed and treated as blessings from the Creator.
Funny you should say that, sister. I just want to share a story about my youngest boy. I have 2 boys. And I remember my son being about maybe 3 or 4 years old. And we were visiting at my mom's, and we were out on the deck, me and my sisters, and my boy was rambunctious, to say the least. And I remember he was just walking by, and he said, "Hey, Mom."
Wait, even before this, he had a hard start in life, but we would get signs. Like, I remember raising him up this one time, in his nostrils, they were hearts. And I thought that was so cool, and I shared with everybody, because that was a reminder, or a sign that he's gifted. He's certainly gifted. So go ahead.
So as he was passing by, he's like, "Hey, Mom, look." And it was kind of dark, like kind of dust out, and there were stars in the sky. And he goes, "I came from there. That's where I came from." What? "Yeah, I came from there," he said. "I came from the stars. I came from the stars, Mom." Okay. And he would share little things like that with me, and then his stories would get more. Because at first I was scared, like, "Oh my God, Mom, this is what he said to me." "Just let him talk," my mom said. "Just let him talk. Just let him share with you what he's saying." Another time he said to me, he said, "You know what, Mom? I came from Creator." "What?" He said, "I came from Creator." And so I let him talk. I said, "So what do you mean?" And he said, I used to live up there." And he pointed up. And he said, he said, "Mom, it's so beautiful there. It is so beautiful there." He said, "There's no pain." And this is like a 3 or 4-year-old. "No pain. It's so beautiful there." And he said, the Creator got me to sit on his lap. He said, "I sat on Creator's lap, and he asked me what I wanted to do. And he showed me the earth. He showed me the earth," he said. And he said, I told him, I want to be a cat." Of course, me saying, and I said, "What?" He was, I prayed and I asked Creator, "Can I be a cat?" And I, of course, having the teachings that I have, right away I said, "Oh, you don't talk like that, my son." I said, "You don't ever pray to be a cat." "Okay," he said, and he left it at that. Sure enough, another time, he said, "Mom, Creator's so kind." He said, "Oh, up there it's so beautiful. There's no pain." Same story. And I prayed to be a cat. So I thought, okay, this time I'm going to listen to him. And I'm going to really not, impede my. And I said, "Okay, so what happened? Like, when you asked Creator to be a cat, what did he say? What were you told?" I said. So Creator said, "Are you sure you want to be a cat?" "Yeah, I do. I want to be a cat. I want to be a cat." And he goes, "Well, cats don't live very long." He said, "But humans, they live long, a little bit longer than a cat. But cats, they don't live very long." okay, well, maybe I'll be a human. I'll go as a baby. And he goes, and I saw you guys. He said, I saw you and dad. And he said, and that's who I want to, he said, that's who I want to be as my mom and dad. Be my mom and dad, he said. And Creator said, Creator agreed. He said, Creator said yes. He said, you're going to bring blessings. You're going to bring healing to that family. Oh my God, I just wanted to cry. And I thought, he's right. He's right. He did bring healing and he did bring blessings to our family. And just recently, my son is now 17. We were driving home from a ceremony and my son said, you know what, Mom? I seen, you should have seen, I seen my sister. And I said, what do you mean? Because I had lost a pregnancy, 2 pregnancies before they came into my life. And I never talked about those losses. So for him to have that knowledge of crying, of that was, and I thought, okay, what? Like, and I thought, okay, listen to what my mom said. What is he going to say? So I said, oh, what do you mean? Oh, Mom, she's so beautiful. And I thought, oh, I'm going to test him. Okay, so what does she look like? Oh, she's a little bit older than Nana, so my niece, and it's true that she would be a little bit older. She's a little bit older than Nana. Oh, she's got really long, beautiful hair. Oh, and just the brightest smile, Mom. And we were dancing together. She came and danced beside me. Oh, okay. Yeah, he said, and Creator said, and I saw Creator, he said, it takes me back to when it's so beautiful there, Mom. All the people that came to the ceremony, they're so happy. They're so happy. He said, but they had to go back. At the end of the ceremony, they all had to go back. But it's so beautiful there, Mom. So when I hear the teachings of late Gukum Teresa, even my late Gukum, I really couldn't connect. Even though I knew there were teachings, I couldn't connect. But what my son shared with me throughout his life, early and even recently, it's like, okay, even though my brain didn't want to believe or I needed proof, there's my proof right there. My son who came to us, who chose us to be his parents, that's my proof that everything that we're being told or all our teachings, that knowledge comes from not this world. So to honor that and to know it, it's so important to know that, to have those teachings.
I also wanted to share about my children and my journey. So I have an oldest daughter who is 22, as Pam talked about. We call her Nana, and she's my only biological child. For many years, I have wanted more children, and I'd done what was necessary medically to have more children, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't working out. So what I did, and this was sitting with my mom and dad and asking, what do I do? I don't know what else to do. And they had given me direction to go to ceremony, to ask for more children. And I'll be, I'll be blessed. And so I did. I would go into ceremony and, pray and pray hard and follow protocol, do what I needed to do. And the first year that I did it, and it was in, one of our bigger ceremonies, I was actually asked if I wanted to take 2 babies. And of course, I'm like, yes, I will do it. I'm off to a ceremony. I will talk to you Monday. I'll be home Monday. And so I went into ceremony and I prayed hard, and I let my sisters know that were in ceremony with me to help me pray. I wanted this to happen. And then after the ceremony, I had told my parents, I told my family, and it didn't work out. I got a phone call and it didn't work out. So I kept on. I kept taking cloth in. I kept going to see these old kukams and just praying for children. And I was told in one of the ceremonies that I'll be blessed in one time and I'll have more than one child. So I was like, yes, I'm going to have triplets, Got to prepare my back to, carry around three babies. And I waited and nothing came. And it was the timing that was so impeccable. I was at my last stop before joining the Big Lodge, and I was grabbing my tobacco and on my way to the ceremony. And when I grabbed my tobacco, coming out of the store, my phone was ringing. So I rushed into my truck and I answered my phone, and it was the same lady asking me if I still wanted these kids. So I said, yes, I'll take them. Like, I'll take them. So what I did was, when I went into the ceremony, I didn't tell anybody, but I prayed as hard as I could. I prayed for these kids, for it to work out, for them to find their way to me. And afterwards, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to bring up everybody's hopes and to be sad again. And so I remember the day that, I was standing in front of a judge, and the parents gave up their rights to parent, and I was awarded, and he sentenced me. He said, I sentence you 18 years to life with 3 beautiful children, and listed off the names and the ages, and I'm like, whoa. 3 kids? And sure enough, my children were 3, 2, and 4 months old, and they have been a blessing in my life too. And they're the most amazing thing that has ever happened to me as an adult and as a mother. I feel very fortunate to have gone through this, and there's more stories to that story, but that's all that I will share. There's a spiritual piece to it too, but it's important to remember that our kids are gifts from the Creator. All of these traditional parenting practices provided an opportunity for our children to grow up with a strong and clear sense of identity, sense of self, who they are. Their self-esteem was high. They had healthy parents and grandparents to mirror from. In their latter years, they were introduced responsibility. So notice, it's not, when they're younger, it's in those latter years of their childhood. And that leads us into their rites of passage, so their change of life when that happens. And their change of life consists of ceremony. In ceremony, we celebrate. We used to celebrate a lot of things back then. So the rites of passage ceremony, an interesting fact, or an interesting experience that I've had facilitating this traditional life cycle, is I've facilitated to approximately 600 people. And out of those 600 people, there may be 6 to 8 people that have gone through the rites of passage. So it is a ceremony that we were losing grip of, but there's a reclamation happening where families are stepping forward and they're approaching elders that have these teachings in their communities, to make sure that their children are welcome in the adult world. So, as my sister and my family knows, I have lots of girls and 1 boy. And I made sure that, because I went through my rites of passage, that us as women, we have gone through our rites of passage in our family, that we kept it going in our family. And there's teachings there. I encourage you to speak to somebody or seek that knowledge, follow protocols, and go through your rites of passage or your kids' rites of passage. In order to celebrate and welcome them into womanhood. It's pretty powerful, and that also provides a sense of welcoming into your next phase and that transition. You're making sure that transition is smooth, and that they know that the support is there that they need. Within the rites of passage, our young adults were acknowledged and they were honored. They learned new roles and responsibilities of their teepees or their home fires, the camp, their kinship. This is where you really make sure that their foundational value system is practiced. And this is the time where they did care for younger siblings. When they are in this next quadrant, it's the emotional phase in the young adulthood. And that's when their brains are more connected to their heart. And they have to kind of figure out that relationship on their own. In our way, we didn't spoil our children. We made sure that they face whatever consequences from the decisions that they made. So whether the consequences were positive or the consequences were negative, there was always something to learn from. So there's a teaching or a word that I like to include in this part of it, and it's Gispewawaswin, and that is like the act to like spoil your children or spoil your child, or to fight their battles for them. So when we do that in traditional parenting, it affects our adulthood and then the old age or Keitea age, the elder age. It sets us, yeah. Children were encouraged to learn from their mistakes if they made mistakes. It was also a time for exploring as well, a time for exploring what their own purpose is. Yeah, they were encouraged to seek out their own strengths and gifts, and then they themselves became healthy role models. So think about how Nana, right, in our family, she's a healthy role model, and she is very involved in, all the nieces and nephews and her younger brother and sisters, and yeah. So speaking of healthy role models, and like Nana, right, the next the next step or transition in their life is finding a partner. So how did they do that back in the day?
That's a really good question. So everything that they learned up to that point, they had good self-esteem, healthy self-esteem, and what you talked about was not spoiling your child. So that also strengthened their abilities to seek, when it came time to seek those partners, what they wanted to look for, because what they wanted to look for was what they saw growing up, being mentored by the old people, their parents, were those healthy relationships. So to me, that was a time that was so important for them to learn those strategies, I guess, or skills that they can move forward when it comes time to picking a partner. That they wanted to, oh, I want a hard worker. Oh, I want somebody who's going to be a kind caregiver, someone who's going to help, make sure that my family is well fed. Somebody who's going to share.
I have a funny
okay,
question
there
for
you
you
go.
then.
Yes.
Did they used to shack up back in the day?
What does
how,
that mean? What did they used to shack up
nowadays
back in the day?
it's like hockey tournament, you're shacked. How long did it take is what I'm asking.
How long did it take? Like, I don't know.
It took 4 years. It took 4 years to court somebody or to
Yes, it wasn't just
develop a
shack up.
relationship. So what they did was the first year was just interaction within the community. It wasn't no spending time together. It wasn't nothing. And then after that, if they showed interest in each other to take it further, then it was actually supervised. And then they were given tasks to do together to make sure that they could work together, to make sure that they knew how to provide for their future family. So it actually took 4 years to date someone or to court someone back in the day. And that's pretty cool. There's there's actually an eagle story. So within our value system, a lot of our values are our virtues, our sweetgrass teachings, we learn from animals, right? So that's why you get courage from the bear, you get, wisdom from the turtle, or whatever your teachings are. It could be 7 grandfather teachings that your community has adopted, or it could be the sweetgrass teachings from, the Cree people here in the prairies. And so love was based on the eagle story. And the eagle story is a pretty cool story that I've learned about, but do you want to hear about it?
Sure.
Okay,
Sounds great.
So the eagle story is where the female eagle, when it was her time to find a suitor, she didn't just pick whatever eagle she found, at the fishing spot. But if a male eagle showed interest in her, she would test him. So this is, where we got our teachings from. So what she would do was she would do things like, for instance, when she would go off to hunt, the male eagle had to stay in her nest until she got back. If she returned from the hunt and he was gone, when he would come back, she would chase him away. And why she did that was because when the mom would go and hunt, or she would go and hunt, somebody needed to be there to protect the little eaglets, their little family. And when your eaglets are left alone, they're vulnerable, right, to elements, to other animals, stuff like that. Another practice that she would do was in the sky. So she would go and pick up a log, and she would fly up as high as she could, and then they would both lock on, and then she would free fall. and they would free fall and free fall and free fall. And if he let go before her, then she knew that he wouldn't be fast enough to catch a little eaglet that fell out of the tree. Or so she really tested his skill and his patience. And when he wasn't a suitor, she would shoo him away and she would start the process again with another suitor. This was important when picking the one that you walk with on the earth. And I think nowadays we're losing a little bit of that, that value, and we're rushing into things. We rush into, to families, and there's no shame in that. It's just something that we practice because we're a little bit farther away from what eagles have taught us over the years. So yeah, and then that goes into the parenting. So that is when you find the one that you walk with and you create that sacred bond, that's when you become an adult. That's when you're expected to have children. You're expected to pass your teachings down, to do those sorts of things. So that takes us into our adulthood domain. And that's where we developed, using the eagle story as well, we developed healthy relationships with everybody in our camp. So what the cool thing about it is that eagles mate for life. So once that female eagle makes up her mind, she chooses her male eagle partner, then they walk together on this earth, and that's the practice that we do. We also developed very clear roles in our relationship. We were involved in each other's families, and we had a shared responsibility for our children, of course, in our home fire. I remember sitting with late dad, and I asked him about a question that, I was in a relationship, and it was an abusive relationship, and that my abuser would silence me, and he would say, "Why are you getting your family involved? This is between me and you. I'm dating you. This is our relationship." And I didn't understand that mentality. And I sat with late dad and I gave him a smoke or tobacco. And I asked him, I said, "Is that right?" I said, "It doesn't feel right to your dad, but that's what he's saying." I said, "Do I honor that, or what do I do?" And so he talked about secrecy and the dangers of secrecy in a relationship, in a healthy relationship. He said long time ago, prior to, traditionally, he said everybody knew everything about each other. And why? It was to support each other. Right now, how our societies are set up is we make room for secrecy. And that's not a traditional practice. He said, so I often think about that, and I think about the teachings that are missing when we talk about healthy relationships and what those look like. Dad connected it to integrity. And he said, if you have integrity, if you have honesty, then you're not worried about who's saying what about you, because you own your actions, you own your decisions, and you own how you treat people. He said, so if you don't treat people in a good way, then that's when secrecy is developed. I really, really appreciated that from him. But going back to what the family looked like, I kind of want to talk about the healthy relationships that aunties and uncles played too in family systems. And it's kind of cool because without talking about it, it almost comes natural for our family. So it's not that I don't parent my children or I don't discipline my children, but my sisters discipline my daughters and my brothers discipline my son. And that's how it's always been in our family. We've practiced that healthy auntie and uncle role. And why that is because if we discipline our own kids, and we see this a lot in residential school families, that the intergenerational trauma. But if we discipline our own kids in an unhealthy way, then our kids grow up resenting their parents. But when you have aunties and uncles that step in and teach you and guide you in a good way and call you out on some of the things that you do when you're young, it doesn't create any resentment. You always think about that cool Uncle Rico, just kidding, or that cool Auntie Bertha. but somebody that you're always willing to listen to and hear some of those hard truths. Yeah, so that's a pretty cool practice that we've had, and thus creating that harmony, thus creating that harmony within our community. That's where that saying comes, that it takes a whole village or community to raise a child, because that's what we practice.
And I think it's an important reminder to also note that women are very are special in our society. They are that portal that bring life. When we talk about the childhood and how children are a gift from the Creator, well, women on earth, on this physical earth, are the portal to bring that life from the Creator to this physical earth. So I think it's important to know that women in our society were held in high regard because they were able to do that. They were the only being, I guess, to be able to do that. To do that on our physical earth is to bring life to. So to me, it ties in like the importance of childhood, young adult, and then being an adult. Like that role of the woman was very important in all stages of the medicine wheel.
That transition into Gaitea, like into elderhood, was a tough transition too. So like our rites of passage is tough on the woman's body, when we're young, when we start our moon time, and then when we come back and our moon time naturally ends and we transition into that Gaitea or that Nutagweo phase, I'll say, but that Kukum phase, that was important too. There was rituals and ceremonies that happened then too. When women transition into that Kukum phase, we became grandparents naturally. Grandparents showed unconditional love in that phase. We also had the teachings that we needed to pass on to our own kids. We didn't go around demanding respect. We knew that as Kukums, we had to carry ourselves in a very regal or honorable way, thus earning respect from our communities. In ceremony, I didn't understand what the Nutugweo or the old lady's role was in ceremony, and I just learned it like in the last maybe 6 years ago. But we were at the Unity Lake, or that Lake by Unity. It's Kilsquaw Lake, but now it's changed to Honoring Our Women Lake. It's a pretty long name, but so I was actually part of hosting the ceremony there, and we were putting up the teepee and stuff, and we had all the elders there, and before the ceremony started, we had the pipe ceremony, the teepee, with all the people outside, and I was sitting with Mom and another lady elder, another Nutugweo from our community, and Mom and this other lady were directing the Oskapios and they were young, they didn't really have their Oskapios training, so Mom and this other lady were directing them, and I kind of joked and I was like, Mom, Kay, quit being so bossy, I said, let the Heroskapios do it. And I was corrected, and I learned that day that it's actually the Nutugweos that, how would you say that? Like we directed, the Nutugweos directed the ceremony. They made sure that the protocols were followed, that the way the ceremony was to happen, because all of the men elders were busy with the pipe, so it was the women that made sure that things happened in that ceremony, and that's how they were held in high regard as well in those later years of their life.
So when you go from childhood, young adult, adulthood, and then when the adults are transitioning to that next phase, that the last phase before they go back to the spirit world, that elder has all those teachings. So in turn, that beautiful cycle of being that person to teach the children all the things that they need to be taught, so they're fully prepared when they go into that young adulthood, so that they're prepared enough to choose that mate, to choose that life partner. They have all those skills, they have all those teachings. So the roles in the life cycle are so important, not only the female but the male. Usually it was the Kukums, though, in the camps that would be the person, I guess, to ensure that those teachings, the healthy relationships, all the things that they wanted their children and the children of the camp to know we're being passed on. So that role of Keitea or Kukam in that camp is very, very important.
I heard a chief say before, you want to know what's happening in your community, you don't go ask chief and council. You don't go ask leadership. You go and talk to the Kukams, because the Kukams know what's happening in each of the families, and it's kind of like a network, and it's just a natural thing that happens in our communities, which I think is pretty cool. Another thing I did want to mention is that our Kukams, or even our Mushams, but when you get to that, when you get the privilege to become an elder, or that those later years in your life, that going back to the respect, that respect was earned, it wasn't demanded. And today, in today's society, we're so backwards, and we think because we're 65 or 60 or 55 even, that we automatically become an elder. Being an elder, you're right from the spirit world all the way, to your life cycle. You're earning, and you're learning, and you're practicing, and you're observing, and you're changing your mindset. You're doing so much work to be able to have the privilege to be called Keitea in your community, which I think is really, really important as well. A lot of times we see a lot of elders involved in things like lateral violence, or not really fulfilling their roles as elders. And it's just, to me, it's not, it's just a symptom of where we're at, and we need to go back to really working hard our whole lives, to be able to be the best version that we are before we go back to Creator, we go back to that spirit world.
I know I've also heard that this one time an elder said, when you meet your maker, you'll be asked, how did you raise your children? What a powerful statement that is. And it really shook my foundation. Like, I hope I did good. I hope I did, everything that I prepared my children for life, the adult, being a young adult, the adulthood, and that they're able to turn around and share with their families, that keeps this beautiful cycle of First Nations or Nehio life cycles ongoing with our teachings. That's why the importance of our teachings, our transitional life cycles is so important.
Yeah. I often ask myself, or I ask other people, when it comes to this part of the traditional life cycle, but what kind of an ancestor are you? What kind of an ancestor do you want to be? So what kind of things do you need to learn? So they're actually thinking about, when I get to be an elder and I go back, what have I left behind? What's my legacy, right? Is it medicine picking? Is it storytelling? Is it, using your gifts to help people? Is it healing? Is it ceremony? Is it being a singer? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different areas of eldership that you can become an elder in, or become an expert in. And that's important too, to understand that not one elder knows everything. I remember going to an elder and saying, I would like to learn more about this. Can you teach me about this? And they didn't say yes or no right away. They said, let me think about it. And I was so nervous, because I thought it was me. I thought maybe, I'm not ready to learn this next step, or so I internalized it. But when they came back and they said, actually, I'm really flattered that you asked me, but you need to go and see so-and-so. They have more teachings. They know more than I do, and they can help you more than I can. Like, I can share what I know, but I really suggest that you go and offer your tobacco, to this person. And that's how elders should be in your community. Not one elder knows everything. We need each other as a collective, and that's how our societies ran. We weren't individualistic, we were collective. We needed each other, and we knew that. And that's how we were able to respect each other as well. We were keepers of traditions, teachings, cultures, songs, ceremonies, medicine, stories, everything. So that's an important job, and that's what I pose to you. is what kind of elder are you, or what kind of elder do you want to be? What kind of ancestor do you want to be, and what's your legacy that you leave behind before you make your way back to the spirit world? In saying all this, we want to encourage you to find the elder in your family, find the elder in your community, make sure that you're following protocol, seek more teachings. You'll be amazed at what it does for your mind, for your heart, and your spirit.
So with that, I would like to thank the Creator for this opportunity. I'd also love to thank SIT for allowing us to share our teachings.
Lastly, we'd like to thank all of you for sitting and listening with open hearts and open minds. Hi,
Hi,
hi.
hi.